Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Anthony Harling. Hey, Anthony, how are you?
I'm good, Ben. How are you?
I'm well. Anthony, it's great to chat with you. Anthony is the managing partner of Archer Mann, which is a boutique executive search and executive coaching business with over 30 years experience. And they're doing a ton of work. One of the areas that's very interesting to explore, which we'll go deeper in, is the career transition elements that they're working on. But before we get into that, Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career today.
Well, Ben, I was very fortunate. I grew up in an international environment. My dad worked for an international company, so we traveled around and lived in different countries. So I was always going to work in business, and I was always going to work internationally. And so I started my career with Heidrick Struggles. I had about 13 years with them, including spending some time in Germany. I had a couple of leadership roles there. I ended up setting up the internet-enabled business that Heidrick created after the .com boom. So that was Leaders Online. I ran that business in Europe, which was great fun. I spent 7 years with Eric Salmon and Partners, which is a European firm headquartered in Paris. Again, very much focus on international projects. And I set up Archer Mann with my partner, Jim Burley, about 10 years ago.
Wow.
One of the other companies that I'm involved with is Not Actively Looking, which is kind of a candidate platform for senior executives that work with the search industry. So overall, about 30 years of executive search.
Yeah. And, the executive search industry continues to evolve. You're working in an area where everyone's talking about the need for talent, the challenge of recruiting the best talent, and then also the changing landscape of what people are looking for. So tell me more about what you guys are up to at Archer Mann.
So Archer Mann, we kind of focus on certain clients. So what we like to do is to serve with a number of clients, but really covering those clients globally. So we do positions that are typically multi-country. So we would be searching simultaneously in the US, in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, wherever. And we've done searches all over the world. So we've done searches in Hungary and Hong Kong, in South Africa, all over North America, all over Europe. And that's kind of our specialism. So we focus by client, not by industry. And so we will typically work with a client over 10 plus years.
And tell me, Anthony, about this area, this career transition element. It's really interesting, and it's not something that I think probably gets enough light. So I'm be curious to learn more.
Well, a lot of the people that I came across, Ben, they would come to me for help. When for some reason, the company changed and they needed to move on and they needed another position, they would come to me for help. And we didn't really know how to help them. And I think the truth is that what we used to call the outplacement industry, it doesn't really work nowadays. It's a model that works in the pre-internet era. And we're now in the kind of internet era.
Okay.
So the work that we do in Archer Mann is based around helping people to help themselves. So we want to help get them equipped, help them understand the executive search industry, how to position themselves online, which is really critical. And how to optimize their networking and how they can leverage their personal network. So we typically work with executives over, sometimes it's a short kind of 5-week program. Sometimes we work over many, many months.
Yeah.
It's really helping senior executives to kind of get their career story straight. This is the kind of big thing.
That's really excellent. Again, I mentioned this to you earlier before we started the show, but I did read in an article somewhere that there were quite a few senior executives that have chosen to perhaps not go back to their current positions or are demanding change. And I imagine you're seeing the same thing, but is that a trend that you're seeing in the marketplace right now?
I think what we're seeing, Ben, is something a little bit different. I think what we're seeing is a kind of realignment of the priorities.
Mm.
And I think this is a lot of this is accelerated by the effects of the pandemic. And whether you talk to people who are in their 30s now, like my kids, or whether you talk to senior executives who are in their 50s, people are realigning and thinking, actually, you know what? I want to spend more time doing this, or I want to spend more time living in this location. I spoke to somebody today who's working in London, but he's living in Madrid. And people can choose. And I think it's a realignment of priorities, which means that, maybe that means I'm going to be less than 100% focused on my work because I'm at that stage in my career where I can afford to, balance multiple interests.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people in that latter stage of their career are now saying, well, I want to do some work. I want to retire gradually, but I'm going to do some other stuff as well, maybe further lifelong learning or something else.
I love that. And I mean, that seems to be related to that discussion that we're seeing in the broader marketplace, this idea, perhaps it's more of a North American discussion. I don't know, this Great Resignation, but it seems like you have a different take on that.
Look, I think the Great Resignation is certainly more of an issue in North America, but I suspect we'll see it here quite quickly. And, for me, the Great Resignation is people saying, well, actually, what happens is during the pandemic, you see companies for what they really are.
Mm.
But the companies that really care about their people, what they did during the pandemic is they really cared about their people. So my daughter, for example, she joined a new company just before the pandemic, like 1 week before the pandemic struck.
Wow.
But the way that they looked after her and the way that they looked after all the employees was fantastic. So she had a really positive experience.
That's great.
However, there are other people who've had actually a not so positive experience. And there I think they're saying, you know what? I don't want to work for these people anymore. I don't want to work for this company anymore. I'm going to move to Miami, or I'm going to move to California, or whatever.
Yeah, I think we've seen those giant, the high profile examples of when that goes terribly wrong, right? When you see a CEO, laying off. I think there's that. I can't even remember the company. A couple weeks ago, some CEO laid off thousands of his employees on a Zoom call. It was just the worst way of doing that.
Awful.
It's awful. So it's kind of shocking that happens in this day and age, but I guess it is what it is. And I mean, tell me a little bit more, Anthony. This moment that we're living through, this pandemic. I think a couple of weeks ago I would have said that we were coming out of it. Now I have no idea. I think all we can say is that we're here and we're living in a new way. But how have you navigated this time, and has it offered opportunities for you guys?
And I made a prediction at the beginning of the pandemic, which was completely wrong. I predicted this was going to be the biggest catastrophe for the executive search industry.
Wow.
In fact, it was the opposite happened. The search industry grew during the pandemic. You only have to look at the share price of the big search firms like Heidrick Struggles and Korn Ferry, and they've more than doubled during the pandemic, by the way, the share prices. They get a feel for that. So what's happened for us is two things. I mean, we've always worked internationally, so we've been using video technology for years. But now, I think there's two fundamental changes in the search industry. One, clients accept a Zoom-only shortlist. And they will accept a process which is 100% on video. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and it's linked to the first, is that clients expect a much, much shorter time frame.
Right.
You can do a search that used to take 6 months. You can do it in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I have examples.
So that's great. So not only are the fees higher, but the margins will be higher as well then.
It's just, the fees don't need to be higher.
Yeah.
What happens is you do more work.
Yeah.
You can do more projects.
Yeah, that's great. One of the funny things that I noticed was that, we hired a ton of people during the last couple of years. I think we've probably tripled in size as a business, and almost all the people that we hired, we did it via Zoom, and we had a robust process, had lots and lots of interviews, et cetera, for each one of these folks. I didn't meet many of them in person until about, I don't know, maybe the second week in December for a holiday party. And it was fascinating to meet people in person versus kind of like their online presence, to be honest. People were very different. And I will tell you that like some of those biases that clearly people say when you meet people in person, like, tall people get more offers or make more money, et cetera. To be perfectly honest with you, I think the Zoom thing almost is a leveler. It's a great leveler. You focus more on the content of their character, honestly, in those interviews.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I went out to Switzerland about 6 weeks ago to see one of my clients. It's a startup company that I'm working with in Zurich. And we've placed 5 people. So we really had a massive impact on the top leadership team there. Mm-hmm. And you know what, Ben? I had never met any one of those 5 people, and I had never met anybody from the company.
Wow.
And so when I went out there and I can see these people, and they're all hugely successful, doing really, really well. But it's telling, isn't it, that you have to adapt to the technology, and what the pandemic has done is accelerated the pace of change.
Yeah. And also it changes relationships. So I would say that you have very intimate relationships. So, you get to a level of connection with people that is a little bit more sophisticated because you're talking with them online in their homes, about their, whether they have a puppy or, a child. And so it's a much more holistic way of understanding people, which is somehow very refreshing, actually. So Anthony, 2022 is a big number. We are moving into the future. We're here we are. And I would say that the talent industry clearly, thank God your prediction was wrong, because for your company, but also just in general for humans, there's a huge opportunity from a talent perspective for people. But tell me more about what you think this year holds for us.
Look, I think there are 2 kinds of organizations out there, 2 kinds of companies, and you've kind of alluded to this yourself with your company. But there are companies who, when they are confronted with the reality of the pandemic, they panic, or they do nothing largely. And there are companies like yours, who adapt and who accelerate and hire more people and do more stuff. And I think what we're seeing now is the benefit of that. So I think there'll be a kind of the companies who are going to go by the wayside, they're going to start dropping away now. And I think that the companies who have jumped in the last 18 months, those companies are really going to start building out. So I think it's a really, really interesting time. I think it's a really positive time. We have some issues here in the UK to do with Brexit and stuff like that. But again, you just have to be positive about it and look for the opportunity. I think the opportunity is there. I think it's massive. Mm-hmm. And, I don't think there's a bubble that's about to burst. There may be a little bit of inflation here and there, but, I think the outlook from the clients that we talk to is really positive. New ways of working, new opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I'm excited about this new way of working. I think some of the reactions that we noticed early on where people, you'd see these announcements of some industries, a lot of finance folks were trying to pull a lot of people back into the office. And I understand that it's probably a little bit of an old kind of a command and control mentality, but certainly anybody who has a conversation with talented young people today knows that their expectation for life is so dramatically different from older generations, right? They're demanding a much new refresh on the model and a new way of living that, to be perfectly honest, is much healthier and a much, much better way of living. So I'm all for it. Anthony, thank you so much for talking with us today. If someone wanted to learn more about what you're up to at Archer Mann, where should they find you?
So archermann.com. And I have my personal website, anthonyharling.com. Either of those would be a great source of information. But if you want to know more about the executive search work we do, or you want to know more about the career transition, and in particular the career story and how we develop the career story for executives, then come to archermann.com and get in touch.
Great. Anthony, thank you so much for being on Uncaged today. We've been speaking with Anthony Harling. He's the managing partner of Archer Mann, which is a boutique executive search and executive coaching business. They also have an expertise in the area of career transition. Anthony, thank you so much for being on Uncaged today. We look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.